Hello, my name's Tuppence. I love this mould. It is really large and I think it's meant to be a tabletop, although it was marketed as a tray. But the problem with it is that it is huge and it takes up a large amount of material. So it's about 30 centimetres across and about 3 centimetres deep. If I'm using resin, it's going to take 800 mils, and if I'm using Aqua cast, it takes over a kilogram of powder. And that much material means that it is really heavy and pretty costly to make. Today I'm going to be making a piece of beach themed art, and I don't want this to be heavy. So I am only going to pour my Aqua cast in the outer ring, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to make this shallower. Let me just grab my scales. I know how much powder and water I would need to fill the whole of the mould, but I only want to fill up the edge, the lip. So I don't know how much that's going to take. I'm going to start by mixing up 70 grams of water and 200 grams of powder. That's the correct ratio. And I'll see how far that fills the edge of the mould up. I can always add a little bit more if I need to. I want it to be level with that centre panel in the middle of the mould. Okay, so I've got my water, I have zeroed my scales, and now I can add the powder to the water. I find that that just makes it easier to mix up. So I want 200 grams of powder. 203, that's fine. Right, let me move this out the way. I'm going to mix this until it's nice and smooth and that there are no lumps of dry powder in there. It should look like pancake batter once it's all mixed up. Okay, before I pour this, I'm going to spray my mould with some 99% isopropyl alcohol, and that should help to break up the bubbles so that I don't have any holes along that top edge. Just going to pinch my cup, and hopefully that will make this a little bit easier to pour this into the channel. So I'm already getting some on the top. I'll clean that in a minute. I want to level this out, so I'm just going to tap this up and down, and hopefully that should make sure that it fills everywhere and I don't end up with air pockets that create holes. Right, making a right mess. Okay, wow, making a huge mess. That was a little enthusiastic. Let me clean myself and the mould up. There we go, easily fixed. Right, I'm going to take a dotting tool and run that around the outer and the inner edges, and then hopefully I should not have any bubbles. So I'm just going to top this up, and it looks like I might need to make up a little bit more just to get that level with that centre panel. I won't show you that because you've already seen me doing this, and then I need to leave this to set. So I'm going to leave this for a good hour and a bit just to make sure that it is completely set, because I don't want this to crack when I try and take it out of the mould. I did add a little bit more Aqua cast to bring that level, and everything is now cured, so I'm going to try and get this out. I just peel back the sides first to release that. It looks like it's coming out quite nicely. So this is pretty thick. It's about half the depth of the tray. That is 3 centimetres. So yeah, this is about 1.5 centimetres deep. So you can see it's pretty substantial. All right, not bad. So I do have a little bit of a bevel. I'm going to need to clean that up because I'm going to glue that down onto my silicone mat, and then I can fill that middle up with some more Aqua cast. So basically I'm just creating a shallower duplicate of the tray. I've got a little lump in there, so that definitely needs to be sanded down. Just going to take my nail file and run that around the edge. Try and get this as flat as I can. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat. The glue will do a lot of that work. So let me just smooth this off. This feels much better now. I've got rid of all the dust. Now I just need to add some glue. So I'm using the bookbinding glue. I buy this in a huge tub because I use so much of it for everything. And I'm going to apply a pretty thick layer with my brush. So I just want to paint that all the way around, make sure that there are no gaps. It needs to make a complete seal on that silicone mat, otherwise when I go to pour the Aqua cast in the middle, it's just going to flood out everywhere. So all the way round, that looks pretty good. Just smooth that out. All right, now I can flip this over. My mat is clean. I'm just going to press that down. I've got a little bit leaking out into the middle, so I'm just going to take a paper towel and clean that up. Right, I don't want to move this now. I'm going to leave this here for a good, probably about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. It doesn't take long for this glue to set. And then I'll be back ready to mix up some Aqua cast and pour that in the middle. I don't think I need to weigh this down. I think it's heavy enough on its own, so I'll be back once this is dry. Okay, this is stuck to the table and it's all sealed, so now I'm going to be pouring in some Aqua. I've mixed this up by eye. I really don't know how much I've got in here or how much I'm going to need. I've made this slightly thicker, so it's on the thicker side of the pancake batter, and that's in an attempt to stop it from leaking out. If this was too fluid, if I do have any gaps, it is more likely to leak out. So I'm just going to dump this in the middle on the table, scrape out everything I've got in my cup. I can always add more layers, and I probably will need to, because this is going to be pretty thick. I should imagine it's going to set lumpy, because what I didn't think about was how I am going to be able to shake this. Now it is on my silicone mat, so I'm hoping I'll be able to jiggle that around, but yeah, I probably should have planned on putting this on something else. But because this is such a big mould, I didn't. So I'm spreading that out. You can see it looks almost like icing. And it's pretty lumpy and irregular, so I'm just going to try and get that all the way up to the edges. Make sure it makes contact with that frame. Oh, it's difficult to get that all the way around, but there you go. All right. So now I've got to try and shake this, so I am going to jiggle my mat. That is leveling out a little bit, so that's okay. Ideally, I'd want to sort of tack this up and down, but I think that's probably a bridge too far. So let me just fill in that hole and make sure it goes all the way around the edge of the frame. Got a few bubbles popping up. Can I get any more of this? No. All right, let me shake that about. Try and get that as level as I can. That's not too bad, actually. Whoops, the cup, I should have cleared my mat off, but all right, so I've got a little bit of a lump and a hole there. I'm not too worried. This is pretty shallow. I have got room to add another layer on top. And I'll make that one slightly runnier because this should have sealed onto the bottom. So I will make that a little bit more fluid, and that should level out easily. Just make sure that it's almost drying instantly that it hits the edge. It's actually drying in place. So again, just give that a quick shake, and then I'll cover this with another layer, and then hopefully that will level out a little bit more and I should end up with a nice smooth surface. Right, I really do need to stop poking around with this. Just trying to smooth out these lumps around the edge. So I don't want it to go too far up. Oh, okay, definitely need to stop. This is already starting to set. So yeah, that's definitely making it worse. All right, I'm going to leave this, and then I will be back once I've added the next layer. I won't show you that. It's just going to be pouring the same Aqua, only slightly more fluid. All right, I did not have any leaks. This has been covered with that second layer. And apart from that little bubble and the lumps around the edges, this is pretty smooth. I'm not worried about the edges so much because I am going to cover those. But now it's time to see if I can get this off of the silicone mat. And because it's silicone, it really shouldn't stick. So this is just suction holding it down. I'm going to peel the mat away from underneath. And that's coming off really nicely. Nice and clean. All right, that's not too bad. I'm not worried about the back. This is going to be against the wall, but I could always cover that with something if I wanted to. And I came pretty close to getting a leak, but nothing came out. And that looks really nice and bonded. Happy. So basically I have the same dish, but it is half the depth. I'm going to be adding an image into the middle that I designed from some clip art on Creative Fabrica. So this is going to fit here. I've left a little gap around the outside, which I'm going to cover. But this plate needs to dry first, and I need to spray this image with a little bit of matte varnish to seal the ink in. So I'm going to take that out to my shed and do that. And once everything's dry, I'll be back for the next step. I've got my dish on a cake rack to help it finish drying, and I've spray coated my image with a couple of coats of matte acrylic varnish. So that is now sealed in, and it is ready for me to glue it into the middle. I've got some of the bookbinding glue. I've just added a very tiny amount of water because this is pretty thick. So I'm going to spread that in a thin coat all over the middle. Get it nice and smooth. And then I can place my image on top. So just line that up in the middle. Kind of dropping the middle down first. and I'm going to smooth it out from the middle and press that down until I get round to the edges. This is helping to push the air out from underneath. Right, that's not too bad. Now that I've laid the paper down on top of that glue, and it's just copy paper that I'm using, it is soaking up the water from underneath, as is the Aqua cast, and that means that the glue is drying out pretty quick, but it also means that it is wrinkling the paper. It's causing it to expand, and that's why I've got wrinkles here now where I didn't before. So the problem I had was that I needed enough water in my glue so that it didn't immediately dry as soon as I put it on the Aqua cast, but not too much so that I didn't end up wrinkling my paper. I'm hoping I've got a fairly good balance, but you can see I do have this little crease here. So I'm just trying to smooth this out as best I can, but the paper has definitely already stuck and dried onto the Aqua cast. I can't peel it up, so I'm just using my nail to kind of squish that out. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more glue on top. This will make the paper softer, a little bit more wet, and I should be able to just smooth this out. So I'm pushing the bubbles out with my fingernail and my thumb, and I'm just flattening that crease. There you go, just flattening that crease with my fingernail. All right, that is pretty good. So I'm just going to keep going around and try and get as many bubbles out as I can. As the paper dries, it will kind of contract back again, so it should smooth out a lot of those bubbles anyway. But I just want to make sure that it is well stuck down. Okay, I'm just going to continue to tidy up the edges, and then I need to leave this to dry before I can move to the next step. Now I want to cover up that border between my paper and the edge of the dish, and that's going to cover up these horrible edges where the Aqua cast is a little bit lumpy. So I have got this mould from Katy Sue Designs. It looks like some rope, and I'm using some air dry foam clay. And I'm using my fingers to push that down into the mould, making sure that it is below the surface and try and get it as flat as I can on the back. I'll need to make multiple of these. I'm not sure how many it will take to go all the way around, but they are designed to be joined together. Once I've filled it up and smoothed the back, I'm just going to flex the mould, and it's really soft. You can just pull this apart, and it's so easy to get this out. So no need to pop this in the freezer. It's really quick. In order to make sure that this joins properly, I just need to do a little bit of surgery. So I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to snip that off so that I've got an angle on each end. It's a little bit wobbly on that end anyway. And when I do the same on the other ones, it means that they should join up and it will look like one continuous piece. So I'm just going to lay this down on top. That glue is still a little damp, so this should stick really well. And I will be covering everything with some varnish that will help to keep it in place as well. So I'm not going to add any glue onto the back of the clay because that'll just make it too soft. I think that might have been out of frame, sorry about that. Now I just need to repeat that process with the next one. So I'm going to snip the end off. And I'll do the same on the other end as well. And then I should be able to get this to join. Just alter the angle a little bit, and then I can butt that up and press this down. And it looks like I've got one continuous piece. So I need to keep repeating this and cover up that join all the way around the outside. It's taken 4 pieces so far, and I've just got a very tiny gap that I need to fill. So I'll only use a small amount of clay and just partially fill the mould. Make sure that it's nice and smooth on the back. And I'll try and neaten the ends up by stuffing my fingernails in there. Then I can just snip that again in the same way I've done before. I only need about 3 of the little blobs. So I'll just cut off that last one, and then I can push this in place and it will join up so that I have this going all the way around. Now I need to leave this to dry before I can do anything else with it. I want to add some shells to my picture, real shells, and I do have some. I had to go and buy them from the shop. Despite living only 5 minutes away from the beach, we're not allowed to remove things from our beach. So I bought them in the shop, and they're pretty ordinary. They're not very colourful. They're a bit boring. So I'll use some of those, but I want to create a few more colourful pieces. So I am using this mould, and I'm adding some chrome powder into a cup. I've put 1 scoop of the red chrome powder from Let's Resin and about 3 scoops of the gold. And I'm going to mix that together to try and get a bronzy orange colour. So I just need to make sure that that is blended. I'm going to paint that directly onto the mould. So I've got a makeup brush. In fact, this is the brush that comes with the powders. You get 10 colours, although they are blendable, and the brush. So I just make sure that's rubbed in. That is a gorgeous colour. I'm going to do the starfish. Really pretty. Make sure that is all burnished on. And then I can take my clay. So I'm still using the air dry clay. Just squeeze that in. Again, try and make it flat on the back. I'm not overfilling my mould, and that way it will maintain all of the shape and I won't need to cut off anything excess. So I'm just pushing that down, and then I can release it from the mould by just pushing underneath and it will pop out. So it didn't pick up all of that chrome powder, but that's okay. I'll just paint a little bit more onto the top, dust that over, and it will stick. Okay, I'm going to do the same and make the starfish and a couple of other shells as well. I've got to wait for those foam pieces to dry, but in the meantime I want to mark the edge of this frame because I want to do some painting. So I've laid my ruler across its width and I'm going to draw a line on either side of it. That'll give me a kind of rectangle, and then I will put this from the top to the bottom and do the same thing, and then I can position it between those marks and get the sort of diagonals as well. Once I've got this all marked, I'm going to take a sky blue acrylic paint marker. These are the NicPro paint markers, and I'm just going to paint that in. So I do want to change this though to a slightly wedge shape. So I'm going to paint over those lines and just angle it slightly so that I get a wedge shape. And then I can fill in between. And this is going to kind of make it look like a life preserver. So I am going to do that all the way round, and then I'll need to leave that to dry. As you can see, I made a whole bunch of foam pieces. I'm not going to use all of them because some of them just are not going to fit on the frame, but I've made a bunch and I can choose from them. I've also got some real shells, so I've weeded out ones that I like, and these ones are either broken, too large, or just, yeah, they're not going to work for me. So I'm going to pop these into a plastic bag and I'm going to see if I can crush them. I don't have any sand, but I do want to make some crushed shells that I can kind of use for a beach. So let me move those out of the way, and I'm just going to take this little hammer and I'm going to smash these. Okay, I managed to get them crushed and I think I've got enough there, but before I put them on the picture I need to coat all of this with some varnish. So I'm just going to brush on some acrylic varnish. I have already sprayed the picture with acrylic varnish, but this is a gloss varnish and I want to seal that and the rope in all the way around. I'm not going to be using resin on this piece, it is only going to be varnish. So I'll give it a couple of coats so I get a nice glossy shine. I'm also going to take this onto the frame and I'll do around the sides as well. Alright, I'm going to mix my shells in with same acrylic varnish. Just drop those in. And then I can use a lollipop stick to give that a stir and make sure that they are all coated. Okay, so this will act like a glue and it will help to stick them on the picture and seal them in at the same time. Grab something so that I can get this off the stick, and I'm going to place some on the path. That's good. And the rest of it I just want to build up along the bottom edge, almost like a shingle beach. Spread that down to the sea. Yeah, just about enough. Let me scrape this out. That's looking pretty good. All right, last little bits. I'm not really liking these chunks actually on here, so I'm going to move those down. You have some of the smaller pieces on the path. Yeah, let's take that down as well. That's a little bit better. All right, I need to leave that to set. The beach is all sealed in, and I've also varnished my shells as well to make them nice and shiny, and they look like they're a little bit wet. So now I just need to arrange these and form a cluster. I'm going to be using some B7000 glue to stick these in place, so I'm going to pop some music on and arrange all these shells. Okay, I'm really happy with the way that that looks. All I need to do now is to add a hanger on the back, and I need to wait for the glue to set before I can do that. I'm making my own plate hanger out of this fake leather. I've drawn around a coaster, and then I've moved it up and just drawn off the edge and connected that by a rectangle. So I'm just going to cut this out. I've made a ring out of some armature wire, which is not very strong, so I've doubled it up and I've wired it together. But if you've got stronger wire, then that is brilliant. Now I'm going to pop that over that rectangle, and then I'm going to glue these two pieces together. So it's going to look a little bit like a tag. Again, I am using the B7000 glue. Just make sure that that is spread over. You do want a decent amount of this on there, because this is going to take the full weight of my plate. Now I can fold that back over, line that up, and I'm going to pop something on top of this just to weigh this down until that glue is completely set. And then this will be ready to stick onto the back of my plate, and I can hang it up on the wall. I've already stuck this on using some B7000 and some super glue, and I just changed the shape of that ring so that it doesn't stick out above the top of the picture. And this is really strong and durable. It'll take the weight of this plate, and I love this. I took some clip art that I found on Creative Fabrica, designed my image and created a multimedia piece that I'm going to hang in my hall. I love the way it's turned out. I hope that you love it. If you do, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. You'll help me out, and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Until then, thank you so much for watching, Take care. Bye.